Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jeanelle Slade.
And I'm Russ Riesinger. How do you feel about public safety in Billings?
That's a question being asked tonight at a public safety forum at the Billings Public Library, where neighbors turned out to express their concerns.
City officials admit that Billings faces some challenges and needs quicker response times for emergency calls. They say part of the solution is adding to both the police and fire departments.
Q2's David J. was there covering tonight's meeting and joins us now from the newsroom with more. David.
Well, Jeanelle, Russ, city leaders say more police officers and firefighters would make Billings safer. City handed out a questionnaire, and the last question was, are you in favor of increasing investments into public safety? Chief Rich St. John says that violent crime and property crime made a big jump in 2011 because of methamphetamine. He says on average 9 officers can handle 5 to 6 calls per hour, but in 2018 the police received about 10 calls per hour. Fire Chief Bill Rash also talked about response times and says an 8th fire station in the Heights would help out a lot, and the city wants to hear how much more in taxes that citizens are willing to pay.
If we do go to public safety mill levy, if directed by the council, then our community will determine what level of service they like, and we'll do the very best that we can do with what they are providing to us.
The citizens are going to determine what level of public safety they want, and with whatever resources we get, we're going to go out and do our very best.
One of the things we've struggled with is with that growth, not being able to keep up with the resource investments kind of in this area in particular.
And Chris Kukulski says the city can be part of the solution, just part of the solution, in the issues of drug addiction, incarceration, homelessness, and mental illness are also helped by different organizations along with county, state, and federal government. Russ, Jeanelle?
All right, thank you, David.
Well, tonight the latest on a School District 2 proposal to dig out of a $4 million shortfall that could result in cutting nearly 40 full-time positions.
Now, that's the recommendation from officials who've been grappling with that shortfall that could grow to as much as $5.6 million over the next 5 years if not addressed. As of today, no specific layoffs have been announced. Superintendent Greg Upham hopes the cuts can be accomplished through a combination of attrition, retirements, and reassignments. Cuts to gifted and talented programs as well as music, library, and support staff are envisioned, resulting in a savings of some $2.5 million through the 2020-2021 school year.
Billings Education Association President Rachel Shilriff tells Q2 the cuts will have a tangible effect on both students and teachers, but she says the addition of 2 new middle schools is not to blame for this current budget issue.
Building those 2 middle schools was the right thing to do. We did not have the capacity to have our students in accredited classrooms at a middle school level. If you look at the populations of each of those, there's no way that we don't have 2 new middle schools with all the students that we have. And so I think this is a more of a funding formula issue.
Shilriff says she plans to meet with BEA members next Tuesday to discuss what the recommended cuts will mean for teachers and the community.
As for the school mill levy election set for this spring, Shilriff says that if it passes, it will help, but it won't deal with the district's ongoing shortfall.
Wyoming's lone Congresswoman Liz Cheney is ending speculation that she'll make a run for Senate this election year. Cheney said in a statement today that she plans to run for re-election in the House in order to, quote, stop House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and socialist Democrats who are threatening our freedom and our Wyoming values every day, end quote. Cheney's decision expected to help former U.S. Representative Cynthia Lummis, who has announced she'll make a run for retiring Senator Mike Enzie's job. Other Republican Senate candidates could still enter that race.
Well, senators took the oath to become jurors in the impeachment trial of President Trump today.
It's only the 3rd time in America's history that such a trial has taken place. After the 2 articles of impeachment for abuse of power and obstruction of justice were formally presented, Chief Justice John Roberts took an oath to preside over those proceedings and then swore in the senators.
During the trial, House Democrats will try and make the case that President Trump pressured Ukraine to announce an investigation into political rival Joe Biden using military aid as leverage. At the White House, the president predicted a quick end to the trial, again calling it a hoax. Meanwhile, the Independent Government Accountability Office issued a legal opinion today that the administration did indeed violate the law by withholding military assistance.
All right, we want to turn to the weather now. Chief Forecaster Bob McGuire joining us. And Bob, we understand some snow might be heading our way.
Yeah, it was a big snowstorm that hit Washington first. Let me show you where. It actually started out in a place called Port Angeles. You can see it here. That's at the northern edge of the Olympic Peninsula, and right there, right on the water, what we call the Strait of Juan de Fuca. Let me show you what it looked like at the surface there. Look at the snow they had in that area today. They wound up with about 2 feet of snow out of this thing, which made travel very hazardous. Look at that car. That's how high the stuff was piled up. It was just miserable. Folks in Port Angeles and much of Washington are not used to this kind of snow. This is the really big stuff, and as you can see, they were working very hard to get through it. So it was a mess, and that's just the beginning of it. Now, a lot of that snow is going to start making its way into Montana. Will we get some of it? It looks like we'll get a part of it, but I think there's a lot of mountain range between here and there. Some of that snow is going to fall apart before it gets to us. We'll have to wait and see. That comes in tomorrow. We'll have more about it in a few more minutes.
All right, thanks so much, Bob. Well, there's now a push to bring back passenger rail service across Montana's southern route. Now, the spark to get Amtrak back online is coming from Missoula, where county commissioners are going on the offensive to build support. As MTN's Dennis Bragg reports, they're hoping other counties are willing to sign on and get the train moving.
It's been decades since passenger trains rolled through Missoula and across the southern half of Montana. In the 1980s, this one-time trip drew a crowd of supporters to the old Northern Pacific Depot in hopes of changing minds. And while getting Amtrak back is a tall order, Missoula County commissioners feel they might have found the means to officially pursue the idea. In recent months, Dave Strohmeyer and his fellow commissioners have become more aggressive in not just building support, but finding a means to seriously study and possibly develop passenger rail service across the old Hiawatha route. Now commissioners are taking it one step further, directing staff to draft a resolution, which could be the first step in establishment of a regional rail authority.
It's typically state governments, state legislatures who establish a rail authority like this. Colorado has one. But in the face of lack of leadership by our own very own legislature, it seems since we have this piece of legislation on the books that we could avail ourselves of, it's something that we can do.
Historically, Montana had two passenger rail routes, the Empire Builder across the Highline and the route of the Hiawatha across the southern half of the state. This new push would be to restore that southern route, going through Helena instead of Butte, plus entertaining the idea of an alternate connection running north-south between Billings and Denver. One of the first questions outside of the cost and economic impact would be the cooperative use of the already busy Montana Rail Link and BNSF rails. But Strohmeyer says that's the kind of assignment the rail authority would work on.
So it would be a partnership, yet to be determined exactly what the relationship would be between the railroads and the rail authority, but the rail authority would really be serving this facilitation role, advocacy role, governance role of getting service reestablished.
Although there are many questions ahead, Strohmeyer's fellow commissioners see both a climatical and economic benefit to Southern Route passenger service, especially between Missoula and Seattle, or for tourism.
And having folks from the Pacific Northwest come here, or a way for folks from the Pacific Northwest to get to Yellowstone in the way they do now via train to get to Glacier via Whitefish, which has become fabulously popular. And given our tourist economy, I feel like this is just the right way to go.
In Missoula, Dennis Bragg, MTN News.
And organizers hope to have the resolution ready to start discussion when county leaders meet in Great Falls next month.
Well, some big news for Bozeman. For the first time in its history, JetBlue will take off with new summer and winter nonstop flights to New York and Boston. Airport Director Brian Springer is calling it a home run for Bozeman, one that will increase Bozeman's footprint across the entire nation. Those flights will be on Saturdays and Wednesdays to and from Boston. The New York JFK flights will operate at least 3 times a week and daily at various times throughout the year. All of those flights to begin in June.
And tonight, some good news out of Billings Logan International Airport. Numbers released today show Billings topped its record high passenger and freight totals in 2019. The airport served about 46,000 more passengers last year, surpassing the previous record set in 2018. Now take a look at those numbers. In 2018, passenger boarding and departing totaled nearly 904,000 people. In 2019, that number comes in at more than 950,000 passengers. As for the total weight of cargo and mail coming in and out of Billings, up 21.5%. Now, Director of Aviation and Transit Kevin Plone reminds passengers in order to keep this record-setting pace, Montanans need to make sure they have their real ID or passport by October 2020.
All right, still to come on this 10 o'clock news, the healing power of ink. We're going to learn about tattoo therapy.
Plus, a Baker teacher in the running for National Teacher of the Year. We meet her.
And in sports, we're in Lodge Grass for a high-energy night honoring basketball great Elvis Oldbull in what just happened to be a battle of #1 teams.
You're watching MTN News with Jeanelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Breen. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.